video 3. We're trying to get a point, a very important correction point that's so needed in this time we're in. We as Christians, friends, will have troubles. We will go through persecutions and tribulations, and everything is not going to be like the rose without a thorn. It's not time for that yet. That comes after the resurrection, in the time when we will sorrow no more, in the time when he wipes away all our tears, and there shall be no more pain. But that time has not yet come for us who are under heaven in these mortal bodies. And for us to put the cart before the horse in redemption seasonings and timings is wrong. I mean, Jesus didn't suffer death at the age of 33 to stop us from aging. There is eternal redemption power in the sufferings of Christ, but in this life, it is false doctrine to preach a troubled-free, sickness-free, sin-free, never going to have any failures or do anything wrong. You're never going to have any problems. You're never going to have any, challenging, rough days. If we teach that, folks, we are lying against the truth. You can't read the book of Acts and preach that with an honest heart. I remember when James said about certain conditions in the human heart, in the Christian's heart. He said, now if you get in some, friction with another person, and because of that friction, you have, envy, bitterness, malice in your heart. He said, lie not against the truth. In other words, lie not against the true condition, but you get with Jesus and you get that fixed. You reconcile with that person. Don't, deny that you don't have those conditions, attitudes in your heart. He said, don't lie against the true condition. Well, why do we think it's okay for us to lie if we, have troubles or pains in our lives or an infirmity? Like one guy, by Jesus' stripes, we were healed, and he had a headache and he was throwing up, and somebody said to him about it, and he said, I don't know what you're seeing, but I don't have a headache and I'm not throwing up. By Jesus' stripes, that's impossible. I was healed. Because somewhere in his spiritual psyche, he thinks his faith speaking, can lie against true condition. Now, there are times when even the Lord said, let the weak say, I am strong. But, folks, you have to be wise in your discernment of the teachings of the Lord. For instance, the scripture that talks about God, how he calls things that be not as though they were. And we've taken that scripture and we've made almost a false doctrine out of it, where we can confess contrary to true condition or true situation, and we call it being in the spirit of faith. Well, God calls things that be not as though they were because of his foreknowledge. Because he sees the end from the beginning. Remember what Jesus said to Peter? just a few days, after the cross. He told him, after years and decades of serving Jesus, the resurrected Son of God, he said, Peter, you're going to, when you get older, in your elder years, you're going to pay a price for your following and serving me. You're going to be persecuted some way, and that persecution is going to take your bodily life. You're going to die by persecution because of my name. What did Jesus then afterwards say to Peter, that he is just taken by those words? Jesus said, nonetheless, Peter, follow me. Serve me to the end. Even in your death by persecution, glorify me. He didn't just sprinkle Peter's life with, it's just going to be all well and good times, and it's going to be sweet without the bitter, and you're going to have much and never lack, and all of the stuff we hear said today. Jesus loved us enough to tell us the truth. Calling those things that be not as though they were. Jesus told Peter like 4 or 5 decades before it happened what was going to happen to Peter in his elder years, because the Lord has foreknowledge. And so he can speak of things that be not as though they were because of his foreknowing. But understand this. You can take that scripture out of that setting, and then you apply it over here into another setting, and the next thing you know, we as believers are told to call things that be not as though they were. And we say it's in the spirit of faith. But do you know calling those things that be not as though they were is also the definition of a lie? Think about it. Yes, God, he cannot lie, because when he speaks of things that be not as though they were, he knows the events to come to their most truth-filled detail. But if you and I as Christians get into this habit to where we're constantly saying things contrary to true condition, folks, you can become warped in your consciousness to the point where you will start uttering supposed prophecies and words toward people that are in vain, that are just false prophecies, false professions. You're speaking contrary to true condition, true situations. Oh, I'm not sick. I don't have a headache. I mean, James said, don't lie against the true ugly conditions of your attitudes in your heart. So why would we lie about the true conditions and situations and circumstances we have in our bodies or are going through in this life? I mean, if you sin, do you say, I sin not? Is that your way out of the sin? Or is it, if we confess that we sinned unto the Lord, that's how we become by him forgiven and cleansed of all unrighteousness? It's not when we deny the sin that we're set free, it's when we confess it unto the Lord. I hope these words are striking your thinking the way they're meant to. More to come.